Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here, settling into this quiet moment at the end of your day. Perhaps you're tired, perhaps your mind has been full of noise and motion, and now you're searching for something soft, something steady, something that can help you let go. That's exactly what we're here for tonight. You don't need to do anything at all except listen, or even just rest while these words move gently around you like a calm tide. If sleep finds you before we finish, that's perfectly fine. If you stay awake, you'll drift through a landscape of the quietest wonders our world has to offer. Tonight, we're going to explore the most relaxing facts about silent natural phenomena. We'll move slowly through the hidden rhythms of the earth, the processes that unfold without fanfare, without sound, without asking for our attention. These are the events that happen in perfect stillness. The growth of crystals deep underground, the patient drift of continents, the soft glow of bioluminescent creatures in the midnight ocean, the way snow forms in the highest clouds and falls without a whisper. There is something deeply comforting in knowing that so much of nature's most beautiful work happens in silence, as if the universe itself understands the value of peace. Before we begin, if you enjoy these quiet journeys into science, you're welcome to follow along for more. But there's no pressure, no urgency. You're here now, and that's all that matters. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink a little deeper into wherever you're resting. And let's step together into the first soft fact of the evening. Snow falls in near total silence. When snowflakes drift down from the sky, they make almost no sound at all. This happens because each flake is incredibly light, and because its structure is full of air. The intricate, branching arms of a snowflake are separated by empty space, so when it touches the ground, there's very little mass to create impact. The air cushions its arrival. In a heavy snowfall, the world seems to hush, and that hush is real. Snow actually absorbs sound. The spaces between the crystals trap sound waves, muffling everything around you. A forest blanketed in fresh snow becomes one of the quietest places on Earth. Deep beneath the ocean, in the abyssal plains, the water is almost perfectly still. These plains stretch across vast portions of the ocean floor, flat and featureless, covered in fine sediment that has drifted down over millions of years. The currents here move so slowly that you could watch for hours and see no change. There is no wind, no wave action, no turbulence. The water is cold, just a few degrees above freezing, and it sits in a kind of eternal twilight. In this stillness, the softest movements become significant. A single grain of sediment falling, a slow-moving sea cucumber gliding across the mud, leaving a faint trail that might last for weeks. Crystals grow in silence. Deep inside the earth, in pockets of cooling magma, or in cavities filled with mineral-rich water, crystals form atom by atom. Each atom finds its place in the lattice, guided by the forces of chemistry and geometry. There is no sound to this process, no crackling or snapping. It happens slowly, sometimes over thousands or even millions of years. A single quartz crystal might take longer to grow than human civilization has existed, and yet the result is perfect, faceted, symmetrical, beautiful. The silence of its creation is part of its beauty. Plants grow without making a sound. We know this, of course, but it's worth pausing to appreciate. A seed germinates in the soil, sending a root downward and a shoot upward. And all of this happens in complete quiet. Cells divide, walls expand, water moves through tiny channels, and leaves unfold into the light. Even the fastest growing plants, like bamboo, which can grow several feet in a single day, do so silently. If you sat beside a bamboo shoot and listened carefully, you would hear nothing. The force that drives this growth is osmotic pressure, water filling cells and pushing them outward. And it works without fanfare, without announcement, just steady, patient expansion. The aurora borealis makes no sound that we can hear. For centuries, people have reported hearing the northern lights, crackling, hissing, or rustling sounds accompanying the glowing curtains of green and red. But these reports are rare and controversial. Most scientists believe the aurora itself is silent. It occurs high in the atmosphere, between 60 and 200 miles above the Earth's surface, far too high for sound to reach us. The lights are caused by charged particles from the sun colliding with oxygen and nitrogen in the atmosphere, making them glow. The collisions release light, not sound. What we see is a silent luminescence, a glow that ripples and dances without a whisper. Glaciers move in near silence. These rivers of ice flow slowly down mountainsides or across polar landscapes, driven by their own immense weight. The ice deforms under pressure, sliding over the bedrock beneath. Most of the time, this movement is so slow and so smooth that it makes no noise at all. A glacier might move only a few inches per day, or even per year. Occasionally, there are sounds, deep groans, sharp cracks when ice fractures, but these are exceptions. The dominant experience of a glacier is one of quiet, cold, patient flow. It is a reminder that the most powerful forces in nature often work in silence. Dew forms without a sound. In the early morning, when the air cools and can no longer hold all its moisture, tiny droplets of water condense on grass, leaves, and spiderwebs. Each droplet forms gradually, molecule by molecule, as water vapor touches a cool surface and changes state. There is no splash, no drip, no announcement. You wake to find the world covered in a fine layer of moisture, glittering in the first light. The silence of dew is part of its magic. It appears as if by enchantment, a gift from the night. Tides rise and fall with almost no sound. The ocean surface lifts and lowers in response to the gravitational pull of the moon and the sun, and this happens so gradually that you cannot hear it. If you stand on a beach and watch the tide come in, you see the water creeping higher, inch by inch, but the motion itself is silent. The waves may crash and foam, but the underlying tide, the slow, massive movement of billions of tons of water, is quiet. It is one of the largest movements of matter on Earth, and it happens twice a day, every day, without fanfare. Sand dunes migrate across deserts in silence. Wind picks up individual grains of sand and carries them up the gentle slope on the windward side of a dune. When the grains reach the crest, they tumble down the steep slip face on the other side. Grain by grain, the dune moves forward. Over years and decades, a large dune can travel hundreds of feet, burying everything in its path. But the movement is so slow, and each grain so small, that the process is virtually silent. Even in a strong wind, the sound you hear is the wind itself, not the dune. The dune moves like a slow, silent wave across the landscape. Stalactites and stalagmites grow in caves, one drop of water at a time. Each drop carries a tiny amount of dissolved calcium carbonate. When the drop hangs from the cave ceiling, a microscopic amount of mineral is left behind as the water evaporates or releases carbon dioxide. Over centuries, these deposits build up, forming the long, slender formations we see in caves. The process is so slow that a stalactite might grow only a fraction of an inch per century. And it happens in total darkness, in total silence, deep beneath the surface of the earth. These formations are records of patience, of time, of the quiet work of water and stone. Bioluminescence is light without heat and without sound. In the deep ocean, countless organisms produce their own light through chemical reactions within their bodies. Tiny plankton called dinoflagellates glow when disturbed, creating shimmering blue trails in the water. Jellyfish pulse with soft light. Anglerfish dangle glowing lures in the darkness. All of this happens silently. The chemical reaction, luciferin combining with oxygen in the presence of the enzyme luciferase, releases energy as light, not as heat or sound. It is one of nature's most efficient processes, and one of the most beautiful. A midnight ocean filled with bioluminescence is a place of silent, glowing wonder. Continental drift is the slowest dance on Earth, and it is completely silent. The tectonic plates that make up the Earth's crust float on the semi-fluid mantle beneath them, moving at about the same rate your fingernails grow, a few centimeters per year. Over millions of years, continents collide, separate, and rearrange themselves. Mountains rise, oceans open and close, and the map of the world is redrawn. But in any given moment, the movement is imperceptible and soundless. You are standing on a plate right now, drifting slowly across the surface of the planet, and you cannot feel it or hear it. It is a silent journey that has been going on for billions of years. Fog forms in silence. When warm, moist air cools, the water vapor it contains condenses into tiny droplets that hang suspended in the air. These droplets are so small and so light that they do not fall. They simply float, creating a cloud at ground level. Fog can roll in off the ocean, settle into a valley, or form overnight in a quiet forest. It muffles sound, softens edges, and transforms familiar landscapes into something dreamlike. The formation of fog is a gentle, quiet process, and the world it creates is hushed and soft. Lichen grows on rocks, and it does so with infinite patience and no sound at all. Lichen is not a single organism, but a symbiotic partnership between a fungus and an alga or cyanobacterium. Together, they can survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. On bare rock, in deserts, in the Arctic. They grow slowly, sometimes less than a millimeter per year. Over decades and centuries, they break down the rock surface, creating soil where none existed before. This is one of the first steps in the transformation of barren stone into fertile ground, and it happens in complete silence, one microscopic cell at a time. The Earth's magnetic field shifts and wanders, and it does so without making a sound. The field is generated by the movement of molten iron in the Earth's outer core, thousands of miles beneath our feet. This movement is driven by heat from the core and the rotation of the planet. The magnetic North Pole is not fixed. It drifts slowly over time, and occasionally, over hundreds of thousands of years, the entire field flips so that north becomes south and south becomes north. All of this happens invisibly and silently. We navigate by the magnetic field. Birds and sea turtles use it to find their way, but we cannot see it or hear it. It is a silent, protective shield around our planet. Permafrost holds the ground frozen in silence. In the Arctic and high mountain regions, the soil remains frozen year-round, sometimes to depths of hundreds of feet. This frozen ground is called permafrost, and it has been frozen for thousands of years. Within it, ancient plants, animals, and microbes are preserved, locked in ice. The permafrost is silent and still, a vast freezer that holds a record of the past. In recent years, as the climate warms, some permafrost is beginning to thaw, but even this happens quietly. Water seeping, ground settling, ancient organic matter slowly coming back to life. Coral polyps build reefs, one tiny skeleton at a time, and they do it in near silence. Each polyp is a small, soft-bodied animal, related to jellyfish and sea anemones. It secretes a hard skeleton of calcium carbonate beneath itself, and over time, millions of polyps working together create the enormous structures we call coral reefs. The process is slow and quiet. A reef might grow a few centimeters per year. Over centuries and millennia, these silent builders create entire underwater cities, vibrant with life and color, all constructed in the hushed world beneath the waves. Moonlight falls on the Earth without a sound. The moon does not produce its own light. It reflects sunlight. The light that reaches us has traveled from the sun to the moon and then to the Earth, a journey of about 240,000 miles from the moon to us. It arrives silently, bathing the night in soft, silver light. Moonlight is much dimmer than sunlight, about 400,000 times dimmer. But it is enough to see by, enough to cast shadows, enough to transform the night into something gentle and luminous. It has inspired poets and lovers and wanderers for as long as humans have looked up at the sky, and it does all this without making a sound. Peat bogs accumulate slowly in waterlogged silence. In cool, wet climates, dead plant material does not fully decompose. Instead, it builds up layer upon layer, forming peat. The water in the bog is acidic and low in oxygen, which slows down the decay process. Over thousands of years, the peat can become many feet thick. These bogs are quiet places, often covered in soft mosses and dotted with still, dark pools. There are also archives within the peat. Pollen, seeds, and even entire trees and human bodies have been preserved for millennia. The bog holds them in silent, cold storage, a record of the past written in layers of undecayed plant matter. The jet stream flows high above us, a river of air moving at over 100 miles per hour, and we cannot hear it. The jet stream is a narrow band of strong winds in the upper atmosphere, typically 5 to 9 miles above the Earth's surface. It forms because of the temperature difference between the polar and tropical regions, and it meanders around the planet, influencing weather patterns below. Airplanes use it to speed up their flights, but despite its speed and power, the jet stream is silent to us on the ground. It is too high, too diffuse, and air moving through air makes no sound unless there is something for it to push against. Diamonds form deep in the Earth's mantle, under immense pressure and heat, and they do so in absolute silence. Carbon atoms are forced into a crystal structure so tightly packed that diamond becomes the hardest natural material on Earth. This process takes place more than 100 miles below the surface, in conditions we can barely imagine. The diamonds are then carried upward by volcanic eruptions, rising quickly through the crust in a type of magma called kimberlite. But the formation itself, the slow arrangement of carbon atoms into that perfect, glittering lattice, happens in the deep, silent darkness of the mantle over billions of years. Clouds drift across the sky without a sound. They form when water vapor rises and cools, condensing into tiny droplets or ice crystals. These droplets are so small that they remain suspended in the air, held aloft by gentle updrafts. The clouds we see are made of trillions of these droplets, floating together in vast, soft shapes. They move with the wind, changing form, merging and separating, casting shadows on the ground below. But the clouds themselves are silent. Even a towering thunderstorm, before it begins to rain or produce lightning, is just a silent mountain of water vapor and ice, drifting through the sky. Tree rings form in silence, recording the passage of years. Each year, a tree adds a new layer of growth just beneath its bark. In the spring, when water is plentiful, the tree grows quickly, producing large, light-colored cells. In the summer and fall, growth slows, and the cells are smaller and darker. This creates a visible ring. By counting the rings, you can tell how old the tree is. By studying the width and density of the rings, scientists can learn about the climate in each year of the tree's life, whether it was wet or dry, warm or cold. The tree records all of this silently, year after year, in the wood of its trunk. The ozone layer protects us without fanfare. High in the stratosphere, about 15 to 30 miles above the Earth's surface, a layer of ozone gas absorbs most of the sun's harmful ultraviolet radiation. Ozone is a molecule made of 3 oxygen atoms, and it forms when ultraviolet light splits oxygen molecules, allowing the atoms to recombine in this new configuration. The ozone layer is invisible, odorless from our perspective on the ground, and completely silent. It has been there for hundreds of millions of years, quietly shielding life on Earth from radiation that would otherwise be lethal. We owe our existence to this silent, invisible shield. Frost forms on windows and grass in intricate patterns, and it does so without a sound. When the temperature drops below freezing and there is moisture in the air, water vapor can change directly into ice without becoming liquid first. This process is called deposition. The ice crystals grow outward from a surface, branching and spreading in delicate, feathery shapes. Each crystal follows the same basic hexagonal geometry, but no two patterns are exactly alike. Frost appears overnight, transforming the world into something delicate and beautiful, and it does so in perfect silence, a gift from the cold. Geothermal heat rises from the Earth's interior, warming the ground beneath us, and we cannot hear it. The Earth's core is incredibly hot, over 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and this heat slowly makes its way toward the surface. In some places, it heats underground water, creating hot springs and geysers. In others, it warms the soil just enough to keep it from freezing. This heat has been flowing outward since the Earth formed, over 4.5 billion years ago. It is a vast, slow, silent flow of energy, a reminder that our planet is still alive, still dynamic, still warm at its heart. Spiderwebs appear in the early morning, covered in dew, and they are built in silence. A spider spins its web by extruding silk from specialized glands in its abdomen. The silk is a liquid protein that hardens as it is pulled out, forming a thread stronger than steel of the same thickness. The spider moves methodically, creating a framework, then spiraling inward to lay down the sticky capture threads. The entire process takes less than an hour, and it is done without sound. The finished web is nearly invisible until the dew settles on it, revealing its intricate geometry, each thread perfectly placed. The carbon cycle moves carbon atoms through the Earth system in a silent, endless loop. Carbon is absorbed by plants during photosynthesis, passed to animals when they eat the plants, released back into the atmosphere when organisms breathe or decompose, dissolved in the ocean, locked in rocks, and eventually returned to the air by volcanic activity. Each atom of carbon in your body has been cycled through the Earth system countless times. It may have been part of a dinosaur, an ancient fern, a limestone cliff, a breath of air over the ocean. This grand cycle operates on timescales from seconds to millions of years, and it does so silently, invisibly, continuously. Shadows lengthen and shift as the Earth turns, and they do so without a sound. A shadow is simply the absence of light, a place where an object blocks the sun's rays. As the sun moves across the sky, or rather, as the Earth rotates beneath the sun, the angle of the light changes and shadows stretch and swing around. In the early morning, shadows are long and point west. At noon, they are short and point north. In the evening, they stretch east. This daily dance of light and shadow is one of the most fundamental rhythms of life on Earth, and it happens in complete silence, a slow, predictable turning. Sediment settles to the bottom of lakes and oceans, layer upon layer, and it does so without a sound. Tiny particles, grains of sand, fragments of shells, dust from the continents, the remains of microscopic organisms, drift slowly downward through the water. When they reach the bottom, they settle gently onto the surface. Over time, these layers build up, compressing under their own weight, eventually forming sedimentary rock. Each layer is a page in the Earth's history, recording the conditions at the time it was deposited. The process is so slow and so quiet that it is almost impossible to perceive, yet it has created much of the rock we see around us. Evaporation happens in silence. When water is warmed by the sun, some of its molecules gain enough energy to break free from the liquid surface and enter the air as vapor. This happens constantly from oceans, lakes, rivers, soil, and even from the surface of your skin. You cannot see it or hear it, but it is one of the most important processes in the water cycle. The water that evaporates will eventually condense into clouds, fall as rain, and flow back to the ocean, completing the cycle. It is a quiet, continuous exchange between the Earth and the sky. Icebergs drift through polar seas in near silence. These massive chunks of ice break off from glaciers and ice shelves, a process called calving. Once in the water, they float with about 90% of their mass below the surface. They drift with the currents and the wind, slowly melting as they move into warmer waters. An iceberg can be as large as a small island, weighing millions of tons, yet it moves through the water with almost no sound. Occasionally, as it melts and shifts, it may crack or groan, but most of the time it is simply a silent giant, gliding slowly through the cold sea. Soil forms over centuries, grain by grain, in silence. Soil begins with rock. Weather breaks the rock into smaller pieces. Water seeps into cracks and freezes, expanding and splitting the stone. Roots grow and pry it apart. Wind and rain wear it down. Over time, these fragments mix with organic matter, dead leaves, decayed plants, the bodies of insects and worms. Microorganisms break down the organic material, releasing nutrients. Slowly, over hundreds or thousands of years, a thin layer of soil develops. This soil is the foundation of most terrestrial life, and it is created in a slow, silent collaboration between geology and biology. The Milky Way turns slowly overhead, and it does so in silence. Our galaxy is a vast spiral of stars, gas, and dust, over 100,000 light-years across. It rotates, taking about 225 million years to complete one turn. We are moving with it, orbiting the galactic center at over 500,000 miles per hour, but we feel nothing, hear nothing. The stars we see at night are our neighbors in this enormous, spinning disk. On a clear, dark night, far from city lights. You can see the Milky Way as a faint, glowing band across the sky, an edge-on view of our own galaxy. It is a reminder that we are part of something vast and ancient, and it all turns in perfect, silent motion. Subduction is the process by which one tectonic plate slides beneath another, and it happens in slow, silent descent. At subduction zones, oceanic crust is pushed down into the mantle, where it is heated and eventually melts. This process recycles the Earth's crust, returning old ocean floor to the interior. It also creates some of the deepest places on Earth, ocean trenches that plunge over 36,000 feet below sea level. The plate moves downward at a rate of inches per year, and most of the time, this movement is smooth and silent. Occasionally, the plates stick and then slip suddenly, causing earthquakes, but the underlying process is one of quiet, continuous descent. Moss grows in the shade, in damp places, and it does so without a sound. Mosses are simple plants, without true roots or vascular systems. They absorb water directly through their leaves and grow slowly, spreading across rocks, soil, and tree bark. A patch of moss can be decades or even centuries old, growing imperceptibly, creating a soft, green carpet. Moss is one of the first plants to colonize bare ground after a disturbance, and it helps to hold moisture and create conditions for other plants to grow. It is quiet, humble, and extraordinarily resilient. The phases of the moon change in silence. The moon does not produce its own light. It reflects sunlight. As the moon orbits the Earth, the angle between the sun, the Earth, and the moon changes, and we see different portions of the illuminated side. This creates the phases: new moon, crescent, first quarter, gibbous, full moon, and back again. The cycle takes about 29.5 days. The moon itself does not change, only our view of it changes. This slow, predictable dance has been watched by humans for as long as we have existed, and it happens in complete silence, a clockwork in the sky. Permafrost thaw releases ancient carbon, and it does so quietly. As the climate warms, some permafrost that has been frozen for thousands of years begins to melt. The organic matter within it, dead plants and animals, starts to decompose. Microbes break it down, releasing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. This is a slow process happening over years and decades, and it is mostly silent. But it has significant consequences, as it adds greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, contributing to further warming. The thaw is a quiet shift, but one with far-reaching effects. Limestone caves are carved by water, drop by drop, over millions of years. Rainwater absorbs carbon dioxide from the air and soil, becoming slightly acidic. When this water seeps through cracks in limestone, it slowly dissolves the rock. Over vast stretches of time, this creates underground rivers, caverns, and tunnels. The process is so slow that you could watch a cave wall for your entire life and see no change. But the evidence is all around: vast chambers, underground lakes, and the delicate formations that decorate them. The cave is a monument to the quiet power of water and time. The sun's light takes 8 minutes to reach us, traveling in silence through the vacuum of space. Light moves at 186,000 miles per second, but the sun is 93 million miles away, so there is a delay. When you see the sun, you are seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. The light carries energy that warms the earth, drives the weather, powers photosynthesis, and makes life possible. It crosses the emptiness of space without a sound, because sound needs a medium, air, water, or solid material, to travel through. Space is silent, and so the light arrives quietly, a steady stream of energy from our star. Glacial erratics are boulders left behind by retreating glaciers, and they sit in silence. During the last ice age, glaciers covered much of the northern continents. As they moved, they picked up rocks and carried them along, sometimes for hundreds of miles. When the glaciers melted, they left these boulders behind, often in places where the surrounding rock is completely different. These erratics can be enormous, the size of a house, sitting incongruously in a farmer's field or on a hillside. They are silent witnesses to the power of ice, reminders of a time when the world was much colder. The quiet processes of our world continue in patterns so subtle They escape our daily awareness, yet their presence shapes everything we know. There are phenomena that unfold across such vast distances or such patient timescales that sound becomes irrelevant, and we are left only with the pure fact of change itself, happening in perfect silence. Consider the way continents drift across the surface of our planet. Right now, beneath you, the ground is moving. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with absolute certainty. The tectonic plates that carry the continents slide over the softer layer of the mantle at speeds measured in centimeters per year, roughly the same rate at which your fingernails grow. This movement produces no sound you could ever hear. There is no grinding, no scraping that reaches the surface in any meaningful way. The Atlantic Ocean widens by about 2.5 centimeters each year, pulling Europe and North America farther apart, and this happens in complete silence. Over millions of years, mountains rise and oceans form, all without fanfare, without announcement, simply through the patient accumulation of these tiny, soundless movements. The formation of sedimentary rock happens in this same unhurried quiet. Particles settle through water, drifting down through lakes and seas, accumulating on the bottom in layers so thin that each one represents perhaps a season, perhaps a decade. Grain by grain, the sediment builds. There is no sound to this settling. A single particle of clay, smaller than the width of a human hair, falls through still water and comes to rest among billions of others. Over time, the weight of accumulating layers presses down, squeezing water from the spaces between grains, and slowly, imperceptibly, the loose sediment becomes stone. This process, called lithification, can take millions of years, and throughout that entire span, there is only silence. The rocks beneath ancient seabeds, now raised into mountains, were formed without a whisper. Deep beneath the surface, minerals transform under pressure and heat. Metamorphism is the name we give to this quiet alchemy, where one type of rock becomes another without melting, simply through the rearrangement of its crystalline structure. Limestone becomes marble, shale becomes slate. The atoms migrate through the solid stone, finding new positions, new partners, forming new minerals with different properties. This happens at temperatures that would seem extreme to us, and under pressures that would crush any living thing. Yet it happens in stone, in darkness, in absolute silence. The beautiful swirling patterns in marble, the smooth cleavage planes of slate, these are the signatures of transformations that occurred without sound, deep in the Earth's quiet interior. There is something deeply calming about the way light moves through space. Photons travel from the sun to Earth across 93 million miles of vacuum, and vacuum carries no sound. The light that warms your face on a spring morning has journeyed for 8 minutes and 20 seconds through perfect silence. It has crossed an emptiness so complete that no vibration, no wave of pressure, no sound of any kind can exist there. The sun itself is a place of unimaginable violence. Nuclear fusion, plasma storms, eruptions that dwarf our entire planet. But none of that sound reaches us. We receive only the light, only the warmth, delivered in perfect quiet. Even the solar wind, that stream of charged particles flowing outward from the sun, moves through silence, carrying energy, but not sound. The northern lights unfold across the polar skies without music, though many cultures have believed they could hear them. The aurora borealis and aurora australis are caused by solar particles colliding with gases in Earth's upper atmosphere, exciting atoms of oxygen and nitrogen until they glow in curtains of green and red and purple. These displays can stretch across thousands of miles, rippling and dancing, but they produce no sound that travels to the ground. The collisions happen in air so thin that it barely exists, at altitudes of 60 to 200 miles, where the atmosphere fades toward space. Some people have reported hearing faint crackling sounds during intense auroral displays, and scientists now think this might be caused by electromagnetic effects very close to the ground. But the aurora itself, that magnificent light show, is silent. You can stand beneath those shimmering curtains and hear only the wind, only the night, only your own breath in the cold air. Rainbows appear and vanish without announcement. They are not objects but optical effects, patterns of refracted and reflected light that exist only in the relationship between sun, water droplets, and observer. When sunlight enters a raindrop, it slows and bends, separates into its component colors, reflects off the back of the drop, and emerges at specific angles. If you're standing in the right position, with the sun behind you and rain ahead, you will see those separated colors arranged in an arc across the sky. But there is nothing there to touch, nothing to make sound. The rainbow is an arrangement of light, a geometry of color, and it appears in complete silence. As the rain moves and the sun shifts, the rainbow fades, and it does so as quietly as it came. The growth of stalagmites and stalactites in caves is a process of such slowness that it redefines patience. Water seeps through limestone, dissolving tiny amounts of calcium carbonate. When that water reaches the ceiling of a cave and drips down, a minuscule amount of the dissolved mineral is left behind. Drip by drip, over thousands of years, a stalactite grows downward from the ceiling. Where the water hits the floor, a stalagmite grows upward. Eventually, they may meet, forming a column. This happens in the darkness of caves, in the stillness of underground chambers, with only the occasional sound of a water droplet falling. But the growth itself, the deposition of mineral, the building of these stone sculptures, is silent. Some of the formations we see in caves are hundreds of thousands of years old, shaped by countless silent moments of mineral deposition. Permafrost lies beneath a quarter of the northern hemisphere's land surface, ground that remains frozen year-round. In places, this frozen earth extends hundreds of feet deep, preserving ancient soils, organic matter, and even the remains of animals that lived during the last ice age. The permafrost is silent, locked in cold, unchanging through the seasons. In winter, it is buried under snow. In summer, the surface may thaw, but below a certain depth, the ground remains frozen, as it has for thousands of years. This frozen layer shapes the landscape above it, preventing deep-rooted trees from growing, creating patterns of polygonal ground as ice wedges form and expand. All of this happens quietly, in the patient grip of cold. The movement of groundwater through aquifers is invisible and soundless. Beneath our feet, in the spaces between grains of sand and gravel, in the fractures of rock, water flows. It moves slowly, sometimes only a few meters per year, filtering through the earth. This water may have fallen as rain decades or even centuries ago, soaking into the ground and beginning a long, dark journey through the subsurface. It fills the pores of rock, moving from areas of higher pressure to lower pressure, following gradients we cannot see. This hidden water is a vast resource, a reservoir that supplies wells and springs, and it moves through the earth in complete silence, a slow river in the dark. Sand dunes migrate across deserts, without making a sound you could hear from a distance. Wind lifts individual grains from the windward side of a dune and carries them up and over the crest, where they tumble down the slip face on the other side. Grain by grain, the dune moves forward, sometimes traveling many meters in a year. The shape of the dune, whether it is a crescent barcon or a long linear seef, depends on the wind patterns and the supply of sand, but the process is always the same. Countless individual grains, each moved by wind, each falling silently into a new position. Over time, dunes can bury forests, roads, even entire settlements, advancing in their slow, quiet way. The formation of opal is a process of exceptional delicacy. Opals form when silica-rich water seeps through rock, depositing tiny spheres of silica in cavities and cracks. These spheres, each a few hundred nanometers across, settle in orderly arrays. When light passes through these arrays, it diffracts, breaking into flashes of color, the famous play of color that makes opals so prized. This entire process happens in darkness, in silence, in the hidden spaces of rock. The water deposits its load of silica, sphere by sphere, and over time, the opal grows. There is no sound to this crystallization, only the patient accumulation of structure, the building of a gem in the quiet earth. Ice cores drilled from glaciers and ice sheets provide a silent record of Earth's climate history. As snow falls year after year in places like Antarctica and Greenland, it compresses into ice, trapping tiny bubbles of ancient atmosphere. Scientists can drill down through this ice, extracting cores that go back hundreds of thousands of years. Each layer of ice represents a year or a season, and the bubbles trapped within contain samples of the air from that time. By analyzing these bubbles, we can measure past concentrations of carbon dioxide, methane, and other gases. We can see the temperature changes, the volcanic eruptions, the shifts between ice ages and warmer periods. All of this information is preserved in silence, locked in ice, waiting to be read like the pages of a very old, very quiet book. The way trees communicate through fungal networks happens entirely without sound. Beneath the forest floor, the roots of trees connect with fungi in a symbiotic relationship called mycorrhizae. The fungi extend far beyond the reach of the roots, forming vast underground networks that link tree to tree. Through these networks, trees can share nutrients, sending carbon to neighbors that are shaded or stressed. They can even send chemical signals, warning of insect attacks or other threats. This wood wide web, as some have called it, operates in darkness and silence. The exchange of molecules, the transfer of resources, the communication between organisms, all of it happens without sound, a hidden conversation in the soil. Peat bogs accumulate over thousands of years in waterlogged, acidic conditions where plant material decays very slowly. Mosses, especially sphagnum moss, grow on the surface, and as they die, they are not fully broken down by bacteria and fungi. Instead, they accumulate, layer upon layer, forming peat. In some places, peat deposits are many meters deep, representing thousands of years of growth. These bogs are archives of the past, preserving pollen, seeds, and even the remains of animals and humans. The process of peat formation is slow and silent, a gradual burial of plant matter in waterlogged stillness. The way planets orbit the sun is governed by gravity, and gravity makes no sound. Earth travels around the sun at about 67,000 miles per hour, a speed difficult to comprehend. Yet we feel nothing of this motion, and we hear nothing. The gravitational attraction between Earth and Sun, the constant falling forward that is orbital motion, happens in silence. The same is true for all the planets, all the moons, all the asteroids and comets. They move through space in a vast, silent dance, following paths determined by gravity and momentum, without friction, without sound. The formation of natural glass, called obsidian, occurs when lava cools so quickly that crystals do not have time to form. The molten rock solidifies into a smooth, glassy material, sharp-edged, and often black or dark green. This rapid cooling usually happens when lava erupts into water or air, and while the eruption itself may be violent and loud, the moment of transformation from liquid to glass is instantaneous and silent. The atoms freeze in place, locked into a disordered structure, and the result is a material that ancient peoples used for tools and weapons, prized for its sharpness. The glass itself forms without sound, a sudden stillness after heat. Lichen grows on rocks, trees, and soil in some of the harshest environments on Earth, from Arctic tundra to desert stone. A lichen is not a single organism, but a symbiosis between a fungus and an alga, or cyanobacterium. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food. Together, they can survive where neither could alone. Lichen grows extremely slowly, sometimes only a millimeter or two per year, and it grows in silence. Over decades and centuries, lichen can break down rock, contributing to soil formation, but this happens so gradually that you could watch for a lifetime and see almost no change. The lichen simply exists, quietly enduring. The deep scattering layer is a phenomenon in the ocean that puzzled scientists for years. During the day, sonar equipment would detect what seemed to be a false seafloor at intermediate depths, perhaps 300 to 500 meters down. At night, this layer would rise toward the surface. Eventually, researchers realized they were detecting not the bottom, but a dense layer of small marine animals, fish, squid, krill, and jellyfish, that migrate vertically each day. They descend to darker depths during the day to avoid predators, then rise at night to feed. This daily migration, involving billions of animals, is one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet. and it happens in near silence. The animals drift up and down through the water column, following the light, following their instincts in the quiet of the deep sea. Frost flowers are delicate ice structures that form on the surface of young sea ice in polar regions. When the air is much colder than the water below, and the sea ice is thin, water vapor escapes through cracks and freezes instantly into intricate, flower-like formations. These frost flowers are fragile and beautiful, and they form in the stillness of polar nights, when the air is calm and cold. They grow in silence, crystallizing from vapor, and they can cover the ice in delicate white gardens. Scientists study them because they concentrate salt and other chemicals from the seawater, and they may play a role in atmospheric chemistry. But to observe them is simply to witness one of nature's quiet artworks. The way mountains erode is a process of immense patience. Water seeps into cracks in the rock, freezes, and expands, wedging the cracks wider. Roots grow into fractures, exerting slow, steady pressure. Chemical reactions dissolve minerals, weakening the stone. Gravity pulls loosened material downward. Bit by bit, the mountain wears away. This process, called weathering, happens mostly in silence. There may be occasional rock falls, sudden and loud, but the vast majority of erosion is slow, quiet, and relentless. Over millions of years, mountains that once stood as high as the Himalayas can be worn down to gentle hills, all through the accumulated effect of countless small, silent changes. The migration of monarch butterflies is a visual marvel, but the act of flying itself, for an insect so light, is nearly silent. Monarchs travel thousands of miles from North America to central Mexico, navigating by the sun and an internal magnetic compass. They fly during the day, riding air currents, moving steadily south in the fall and north in the spring. A single butterfly weighs less than a gram, and the sound of its wings is too faint to hear unless it passes very close to your ear. When thousands of monarchs cluster together in their wintering sites, covering trees in a living blanket of orange and black, they hang quietly, conserving energy, waiting for the warmth of the sun. The Great Migration, one of the most remarkable journeys in the animal kingdom, unfolds in near silence. The process of fossilization is a rare and quiet transformation. When an organism dies, it is usually consumed or decays, returning its material to the environment. But occasionally, under the right conditions, the remains are buried quickly in sediment, protected from scavengers and oxygen. Over time, minerals from groundwater seep into the bones or shells, replacing the original material molecule by molecule, turning the remains to stone. This process can take millions of years, and it happens in darkness, in the layers of accumulating sediment, without sound. The result is a fossil, a stone echo of a life that once was, preserved by silence and time. River deltas grow where rivers meet the sea, depositing the sediment they have carried from far inland. The river slows as it spreads out, and the particles it carries, sand, silt, clay, settle to the bottom. Over time, the delta builds outward into the sea, creating new land. The process is continuous and quiet. Each flood brings a new layer of sediment. Channels shift and divide, forming the branching patterns that give deltas their name, after the Greek letter. The Mississippi Delta, the Nile Delta, the Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta. These are landscapes built by the patient, silent deposition of sediment, grain by grain, year by year. The way certain deserts bloom after rare rains is a phenomenon of sudden color in a landscape of stillness. Seeds lie dormant in the dry soil, sometimes for years, waiting for the signal of moisture. When rain finally comes, they germinate quickly, and within days, the desert is carpeted with wildflowers. This transformation is dramatic, but the growth of each plant, the opening of each flower, happens quietly. There is no sound to the unfurling of petals, the lengthening of stems. The desert blooms in silence, a brief and beautiful response to water, before the heat returns and the flowers set seed, and the cycle of waiting begins again. The formation of coal took place over millions of years in ancient swamps and forests. Plants grew, died, and fell into waterlogged soil where they did not fully decay. Over time, they were buried under more sediment, and the pressure and heat of burial transformed the plant material into peat, then into lignite, then into coal. This transformation is called coalification, and it happened in silence, deep underground, over spans of time almost too long to imagine. The coal we burn today is fossilized sunlight, energy captured by plants hundreds of millions of years ago, stored in silence through the ages. The slow creep of soil down a hillside is a process called solifluction, and it happens in cold regions where the ground freezes and thaws. When the surface layer thaws in summer, it becomes saturated with water and can flow slowly over the still frozen ground beneath. This movement is measured in centimeters per year, far too slow to see, and it happens without sound. Over time, solifluction can create distinctive lobe patterns on hillsides, and it can gradually transport soil and rock downslope, reshaping the landscape in the quietest possible way. The way spiders produce silk is a process of elegant chemistry. Inside the spider's abdomen, specialized glands produce liquid proteins. As the spider pulls the silk out through its spinnerets, the proteins align and crystallize into fibers that are, weight for weight, stronger than steel. This happens quickly, but it happens in silence. The spider spins its web, attaching strands, creating geometric patterns or tangled funnels, depending on the species. The silk itself is produced without sound, a material of remarkable strength and flexibility, emerging from the spider's body in a continuous, quiet flow. The aurora australis, the southern counterpart to the northern lights, dances over Antarctica in the same silent beauty. Few people witness it, as the continent is so remote and inhospitable, but the auroras there are just as magnificent, curtains of light rippling over ice and ocean. They occur for the same reasons, solar particles interacting with the atmosphere, and they are just as silent. The lights reflect off the ice, doubling their glow, and the only sounds are the wind and the distant creak of glaciers. The way tree rings form is a quiet record of growth. Each year, a tree adds a new layer of wood beneath its bark. In spring, when water is plentiful, the cells are large and the wood is light-colored. In summer, growth slows, the cells are smaller, and the wood is darker. This creates a visible ring for each year of the tree's life. By counting the rings, we can determine the tree's age. By measuring their width, we can learn about past climates. Wide rings indicate good growing conditions. Narrow rings suggest drought or stress. This information is recorded silently, year by year, in the wood of the tree, a chronicle written in cellulose. The movement of sand along a beach, driven by waves and currents, is called longshore drift. Waves approach the shore at an angle, pushing sand up the beach. When the water retreats, gravity pulls the sand straight back down. The result is a zigzag movement of sand along the coast. Over time, this process can transport vast amounts of sediment, building spits and bars, reshaping coastlines. Each grain of sand moves individually, tumbled by water, and the process is continuous and silent, a slow river of sand flowing parallel to the shore. The way certain clays expand and contract with moisture is a quiet but powerful force. Montmorillonite and other smectite clays can absorb water between their layers, swelling to many times their dry volume. When they dry out, they shrink again. This expansion and contraction can crack foundations, buckle roads, and shift hillsides. It happens slowly, over seasons, driven by the cycles of rain and drought, and it happens in silence. The clay simply responds to water, its crystalline layers sliding apart or pressing together, exerting forces that can reshape the human and natural landscape. The formation of desert varnish is a mystery that scientists are still working to fully understand. On rock surfaces in deserts around the world, a dark coating develops over thousands of years. This varnish is rich in manganese and iron, and it is thought to form through a combination of wind-blown dust, moisture, and possibly the activity of microorganisms. The coating builds up incredibly slowly, perhaps a few micrometers per century, and it happens in silence, a gradual darkening of the stone. Ancient peoples carved through this varnish to create petroglyphs, and by studying the varnish that has reformed over the carvings, scientists can sometimes estimate their age. The way certain seeds disperse on the wind is a silent journey. Dandelion seeds, each attached to a feathery parachute of bristles, drift on the slightest breeze. Maple seeds spin like tiny helicopters, slowing their fall and traveling far from the parent tree. These seeds are designed by evolution to be carried by air, and they move without sound, floating, gliding, tumbling, until they land and perhaps take root. The dispersal of seeds by wind is one of nature's quiet strategies for spreading life across the landscape. The deep ocean trenches, the deepest parts of the sea, are places of profound silence. The Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth, reaches down nearly 11 kilometers below the surface. At that depth, the pressure is more than 1,000 times greater than at sea level, and no light penetrates. The water is near freezing, and life is sparse but present. Strange fish, amphipods, and microorganisms adapted to the extreme conditions. In these trenches, sound travels differently than in shallower water, and the environment is one of stillness and cold. The trenches are scars where tectonic plates collide, one diving beneath the other, and they are among the most remote and quiet places on the planet. The way certain rocks, called concretions, form within sedimentary layers is a process of chemical precipitation. Minerals dissolve in groundwater crystallize around a nucleus, a shell, a bone, a pebble, and gradually build outward, forming spherical or irregular masses. These concretions can be harder than the surrounding rock, and as the softer rock erodes away, the concretions are left behind, sometimes scattered across a landscape like stone eggs. They form slowly, silently, in the hidden spaces of sediment, and they can take thousands of years to grow. The migration of eels is one of the great mysteries of the natural world, and it happens largely in silence. European and American eels are born in the Sargasso Sea, a region of the Atlantic Ocean. The larvae drift on ocean currents, taking months or even years to reach the coasts of Europe or North America. They transform into elvers, tiny transparent eels, and swim up rivers and streams, sometimes traveling far inland. They live in fresh water for years, growing, and then, when they reach maturity, they return to the sea, swimming back to the Sargasso to spawn. This journey, thousands of miles, is undertaken by millions of eels, and it happens quietly, beneath the surface, driven by instincts we're only beginning to understand. The way certain minerals fluoresce under ultraviolet light is a silent revelation of hidden color. Fluorite, calcite, and willemite are among the minerals that absorb UV light and re-emit it as visible light, glowing in brilliant greens, reds, and blues. In ordinary light, these minerals may look unremarkable, but under a UV lamp, they transform. This fluorescence is a property of their crystalline structure, a response to energy, and it happens instantly and silently. The glow is a quiet beauty, a hidden aspect of the mineral revealed only under the right conditions. The way glacial ice moves is a slow, silent flow. Glaciers are rivers of ice, and they move under their own weight, deforming and sliding over the bedrock beneath. The ice at the surface may be brittle, cracking to form crevasses, but deeper down, under pressure, the ice behaves more like a very thick fluid. It flows downhill, carving valleys, plucking rocks from the bedrock, and grinding them into fine sediment. This movement is usually measured in meters per year, though some glaciers move faster. The flow itself is silent, a patient grinding and sliding, a force that has shaped much of the Northern Hemisphere's landscape. The way certain plants close their leaves at night, a phenomenon called nyctinasty, is a quiet daily rhythm. The leaves of clover, beans, and the sensitive plant Mimosa pudica fold up as darkness falls, then open again with the light of morning. This movement is controlled by changes in water pressure within cells at the base of the leaf, and it happens in response to circadian rhythms and light levels. The leaves move slowly, folding in silence, a gentle nightly ritual that has been observed and wondered at for centuries. The quiet unfolding of a fern frond, called a fiddlehead, happens with such gentleness that you could sit beside it for hours and never hear a sound. The tightly coiled spiral loosens cell by cell, each segment expanding as water fills its tissues and turgor pressure builds within. This process, known as circinate vernation, protects the delicate growing tip as it emerges from the forest floor. The mathematics of the spiral follow patterns found throughout nature, the same graceful curves that appear in seashells and galaxies. As the frond unfurls over days or weeks, it transforms from a tight green scroll into a broad, light-catching leaf, all without a whisper. You can watch this ancient plant, unchanged for millions of years, perform its silent dance of growth and feel connected to deep time. And in the darkness of caves, another silent process creates beauty from dripping water. Stalactites hang from cave ceilings like frozen waterfalls, growing downward one molecule at a time. Each drop of water that seeps through limestone above dissolves tiny amounts of calcium carbonate. When the drop reaches the cave's air, carbon dioxide escapes from the water, and a microscopic ring of calcite is left behind. Drop after drop, ring after ring, the stalactite extends downward at a pace so slow it defies our sense of time. Some grow only a cubic centimeter every 100 years. The silence in these caves is profound, broken only by the occasional soft plink of water meeting stone. Yet in that silence, sculpture happens, patient and eternal. Stalagmites rise from cave floors to meet their hanging partners, built by the same patient chemistry. The water that drips from above carries its cargo of dissolved minerals downward, and where it lands, it deposits another thin layer. Over thousands of years, these deposits build upward into cones, columns, and towers of stone. Sometimes a stalactite and stalagmite will meet after millennia of growth, forming a complete column from floor to ceiling. This union happens in absolute silence, the final connection made by the same gentle process that began when the first drop fell. These formations exist in darkness, growing whether witnessed or not, a reminder that nature's most beautiful work often happens unseen and unheard. The formation of pearls inside oysters is another testament to quiet transformation. When a tiny irritant, perhaps a grain of sand or a parasite, enters the soft tissue of a mollusk, the creature responds by coating it with layers of nacre, the same iridescent material that lines its shell. Each layer is microscopically thin, composed of calcium carbonate crystals arranged in precise patterns. The oyster adds layer upon layer, year after year, building the irritant into something luminous and smooth. This process happens in the darkness of the ocean floor, in complete silence, with no conscious intention on the part of the oyster. It is simply a biological response, yet it produces objects humans have treasured for thousands of years. The pearl grows in secret, a small moon forming in the dark. Spider webs materialize in the night, woven in silence by creatures whose work seems almost magical. A single orb weaver spider can construct an entire web in less than an hour, yet the process makes no sound. The silk emerges from spinnerets as a liquid protein that solidifies instantly upon contact with air. The spider moves with practiced precision, first laying down radial threads like spokes of a wheel, then spiraling inward with sticky capture threads. The tensile strength of spider silk exceeds that of steel of the same thickness, yet it remains flexible and light. By morning, the web hangs jeweled with dew, a geometric marvel that appeared while the world slept. The spider waits at the center or hidden at the edge, patient and still, for the vibrations that signal a meal. The silent migration of nutrients through soil connects all life on land. Beneath your feet, minerals dissolve in water and move through networks of tiny spaces between soil particles. Plant roots extend into this hidden world, their tips covered in microscopic root hairs that increase their surface area enormously. Through osmosis and active transport, roots draw water and dissolve nutrients inward. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and dozens of trace elements make this quiet journey from soil to root to stem to leaf. Meanwhile, fungi form partnerships with roots, their thread-like hyphae extending even further into the soil, mining nutrients the plant cannot reach alone. This underground economy operates continuously, silently, supporting every forest, every garden, every grassland. Without this quiet exchange, no plant could live, and neither could we. The process called phototropism guides plants to grow toward light, bending slowly and silently over hours and days. When light strikes one side of a plant's stem more than the other, hormones called auxins redistribute themselves, accumulating on the shaded side. These hormones cause cells on the darker side to elongate more than those on the lit side, and the stem bends toward the light. This happens so gradually that you cannot see it in real time. Yet if you watch a time lapse, the plant seems to dance. Sunflowers famously track the sun across the sky when young, their stems bending east to west during the day, then slowly straightening and turning back east at night. This quiet choreography maximizes the light they capture, helping them grow strong. Even in a windowsill, a houseplant will lean toward the glass, reaching for brightness in perfect silence. Deep in the Earth's mantle, convection currents move rock in slow, silent circles. Though we think of rock as solid and immobile, under enough heat and pressure, it behaves almost like a thick fluid over geological time. Hot material near the core rises slowly, while cooler material near the crust sinks. This convection is the engine that drives plate tectonics, the force behind continental drift, earthquakes, and mountain building. Yet the rock moves at speeds measured in centimeters per year, far too slow to generate sound. These currents have been flowing for billions of years, stirring the planet's interior in a slow-motion dance. The heat that drives them is left over from Earth's formation and continuously generated by radioactive decay. This silent furnace keeps our planet geologically alive. The formation of amber preserves ancient life in golden silence. When certain trees are injured, they produce sticky resin that seals the wound and protects against infection. Sometimes small creatures, insects or spiders, become trapped in this resin. As more resin flows, the trapped organism is completely encased. Over millions of years, buried beneath sediment, the resin fossilizes, its organic compounds slowly transforming into the hard, translucent substance we call amber. The creature inside remains remarkably preserved, its delicate structures intact, a moment of ancient time frozen in golden stone. No sound accompanied its entrapment, nor the long chemical transformation that followed. When we hold amber to the light and see the insect within, we witness a silent story that spans epochs. The growth of coral reefs, those underwater cities of life, proceeds in near silence. Each coral polyp, a tiny animal related to jellyfish, secretes calcium carbonate to build a protective skeleton around itself. As the polyp grows and reproduces, the skeleton grows too, adding to the structure of the reef. Millions of polyps working over centuries create vast limestone formations that can be seen from space. The Great Barrier Reef, stretching over 2,300 kilometers, is the largest structure ever built by living organisms. Yet it rose from the ocean floor without fanfare, without sound, through the patient work of countless small creatures. The reef provides habitat for thousands of species, a metropolis of biodiversity built in silence. At night, corals extend their tentacles to feed on plankton, and the reef becomes a garden of waving arms, still and quiet. The formation of natural glass occurs when certain materials cool too quickly for crystals to form. Obsidian, volcanic glass, is created when lava-rich in silica erupts and cools rapidly. The atoms freeze in a disordered state, creating a smooth, glassy texture rather than a crystalline structure. This glass can be sharper than surgical steel when fractured, and ancient peoples used it for tools and weapons. The cooling happens in silence, the molten rocks solidifying into black or dark green glass that reflects light with a subtle sheen. Similarly, fulgurites form when lightning strikes sand, melting it instantly and fusing the grains into glassy tubes. These hollow structures preserve the path of the lightning bolt, a frozen echo of immense energy, yet formed in a fraction of a second and cooling in silence. The patient accumulation of peat in wetlands stores carbon and preserves history. In waterlogged conditions where oxygen is scarce, dead plant material decomposes very slowly. Mosses, especially sphagnum, build up layer upon layer, compressing the older material below. Over thousands of years, these layers become peat, a dense, dark brown substance that is partly decomposed plant matter. Peat bogs are remarkable archives, preserving pollen, seeds, and even human remains in astonishing detail. The famous bog bodies of northern Europe, some over 2,000 years old, were preserved by the acidic, oxygen-poor conditions. The peat forms silently, a slow burial that records the passage of time. These wetlands also play a crucial role in the carbon cycle, storing vast amounts of carbon that would otherwise contribute to atmospheric CO2. The silent explosion of a puffball mushroom releases millions of spores into the air. When mature, these round fungi develop a papery outer skin. A drop of rain, a footstep, or even a gentle touch can cause the puffball to rupture, and a cloud of brown spores puffs out from the opening. Each spore is a potential new fungus, carried on the wind to distant places. The release is nearly instantaneous, yet produces no sound, just a soft brown cloud that disperses on the breeze. Some giant puffballs can grow larger than a soccer ball and contain trillions of spores. This is the fungal strategy for reproduction. Produce spores in such staggering numbers that at least a few will find suitable conditions to germinate. The process is extravagant yet silent, a lottery played with microscopic tickets scattered on the wind. The formation of geodes creates hollow stones lined with crystals. These rounded rocks form in cavities within volcanic or sedimentary rock. Mineral-rich water seeps into the hollow space, and over time, minerals precipitate out of solution, forming crystals that grow inward from the walls. The outer shell remains plain and unremarkable, giving no hint of the treasure within. Geodes can take thousands or millions of years to form, each crystal growing silently in the darkness. When finally broken open, they reveal interiors sparkling with quartz, amethyst, or other minerals, each crystal face catching light in geometric perfection. The contrast between the rough exterior and the glittering interior reminds us that beauty often forms in hidden places, slowly and without announcement. The silent dance of chromosomes during cell division is a marvel of biological precision. When a cell prepares to divide, its DNA condenses into visible structures called chromosomes. These duplicated chromosomes line up at the cell's center, then are pulled apart by protein structures called spindle fibers. Each daughter cell receives an exact copy of the genetic material. This process, called mitosis, happens in every growing tissue in your body, millions of times per day. Despite the complexity and the precision required, it proceeds in complete silence at the microscopic scale. There is no sound as the chromosomes migrate to opposite poles of the cell, no noise as the cell membrane pinches inward to create two cells from one. Life copies itself quietly, maintaining the information that defines each organism. The formation of natural bridges and arches demonstrates erosion's patient artistry. Water, wind, and ice work on rock, exploiting weaknesses and gradually removing material. In some formations, a hole is worn completely through a rock wall, creating an arch or bridge. The Colorado Plateau is famous for its arches, delicate spans of sandstone that frame the desert sky. Each arch forms over thousands or millions of years, grain by grain, removed by weathering. The process is so slow that it generates no sound, though occasionally, when an arch finally collapses under its own weight, there is a brief thunder. But the creation is silent, a sculpture emerging from stone through the quiet persistence of natural forces. These arches stand as temporary monuments, beautiful in their fragility, reminding us that even stone is not permanent. The migration of magnetic north is a slow, silent wandering. Earth's magnetic field is generated by the movement of molten iron in the outer core, a process called the geodynamo. This field is not static. The magnetic poles drift over time, moving several kilometers per year. The North Magnetic Pole, which compasses point toward, has wandered across the Canadian Arctic and is currently moving toward Siberia. This drift happens continuously, without sound, driven by changes in the flow patterns deep within the Earth. Over longer timescales, the magnetic field can even reverse completely, with North and South Pole switching places. These reversals have happened hundreds of times in Earth's history, recorded in the magnetic signature of rocks. The process takes thousands of years and proceeds in silence, a planetary phenomenon beyond human perception. The formation of snowflakes is a study in silent symmetry. High in the atmosphere, water vapor condenses directly into ice around a tiny nucleus, perhaps a speck of dust or pollen. As the ice crystal falls through clouds, it encounters varying conditions of temperature and humidity. These conditions determine how the crystal grows, adding branches and plates and patterns that are unique to each snowflake. The six-fold symmetry arises from the hexagonal structure of ice crystals at the molecular level. Each arm of the snowflake experiences roughly the same conditions as it falls, so they grow in similar ways, creating the intricate, symmetrical patterns we admire. Yet no two snowflakes are exactly alike, because each takes a slightly different path through the atmosphere. They form in silence, tiny ice sculptures that fall softly to Earth, each one a small miracle of physics and beauty. The process of lithification turns loose sediment into solid rock without fanfare. Sand, silt, and clay settle in layers at the bottom of oceans, lakes, or rivers. Over time, more sediment accumulates on top, and the weight compresses the lower layers. Water moving through the sediment carries dissolved minerals that precipitate in the spaces between grains, cementing them together. This process, which can take thousands to millions of years, transforms soft sediment into sandstone, shale, or mudstone. It happens in darkness, under pressure, in complete silence. The resulting rock may eventually be uplifted and exposed, revealing the layers that record ancient environments. Each stratum is a page in Earth's history book, written quietly at the bottom of long-vanished seas. The silent spread of bioluminescent plankton in the ocean creates living light. Certain dinoflagellates produce light through a chemical reaction when disturbed. During the day, these microscopic organisms drift with the currents, invisible and ordinary. But at night, when waves break or a hand trails through the water, they flash blue-green, creating a magical glow. Millions of these tiny lights together can make entire waves sparkle or leave a glowing trail behind a boat. The light is produced without heat, a cold luminescence that is remarkably efficient. The organisms use it as a defense mechanism, the flash potentially startling predators or attracting larger predators to eat the smaller ones. The blooms of these plankton are unpredictable, appearing and disappearing with changes in water conditions. When they do appear, they transform the ocean into a field of stars, a silent light show that has amazed sailors and beachgoers for millennia. The formation of natural mummies in dry environments preserves bodies through desiccation. In places like the Atacama Desert or certain high-altitude caves, the combination of low humidity, temperature extremes, and sometimes salt deposits can prevent decomposition. Bacteria that normally break down tissue require moisture to function. Without it, soft tissues dry out rather than decay, preserving the body's form. The Chinchorro mummies of Chile, some over 7,000 years old, are among the oldest deliberately prepared mummies, but natural mummification is even more ancient. Bodies preserved this way can retain skin, hair, and even facial features, offering a direct connection to people who lived thousands of years ago. The process happens silently, a gradual drying that halts time's usual work. These preserved individuals become windows into the past, their silent presence a bridge across centuries. The slow creep of soil down slopes reshapes landscapes without drama. On hillsides, gravity constantly pulls soil downward, but usually so slowly that it's imperceptible. Freeze-thaw cycles, the growth of plant roots, and the activity of burrowing animals all contribute to this gradual movement. Over decades and centuries, this soil creep can move substantial amounts of material, changing the contours of hills and filling in valleys. Fence posts on slopes may gradually tilt downhill, and trees may develop curved trunks as they grow upward while their roots shift. The process is continuous and silent, a slow-motion landslide that operates on human timescales but is rarely noticed. It's one of the many ways that landscapes evolve, a reminder that even solid ground is slowly on the move. The formation of desert pavement creates stone mosaics on arid landscapes. In deserts, wind and occasional rain remove fine particles like sand and silt, leaving behind a surface covered with pebbles and rocks fitted closely together. This layer, called desert pavement, can protect the soil beneath from further erosion. The stones may become coated with desert varnish, giving the surface a dark, polished appearance. The formation of desert pavement takes thousands of years, as wind quietly winnows away the smaller particles and the remaining stones settle into place. The result is a natural mosaic, a smooth expanse of fitted stones that looks almost deliberately arranged. Walking across desert pavement, you're treading on a surface that has been sculpted by wind and time, a floor laid down by nature's patient hand. The silent journey of a river finding its path to the sea follows the logic of gravity and geology. Water always seeks the lowest point, carving channels through the landscape as it flows. A river's course may shift over time, especially in flat terrain where the gradient is gentle. Meanders form as water flows faster on the outside of curves, eroding the bank while depositing sediment on the inside. Over centuries, these meanders can become more pronounced, and sometimes a river will cut across the neck of a meander, shortening its course and leaving behind an oxbow lake. The river shapes the land, and the land shapes the river in a continuous, silent conversation. The Mississippi, the Amazon, the Nile, all have wandered across their floodplains over millennia, leaving behind old channels and creating new ones, writing their history in the land. The formation of hoodoos, those tall, thin spires of rock, showcases differential erosion. In places where rock layers vary in hardness, erosion removes softer material faster than harder material. A cap of hard rock can protect the softer rock beneath it, creating a column that stands while surrounding material is worn away. Over time, these columns become taller and more isolated as erosion continues around them. Bryce Canyon in Utah is famous for its thousands of hoodoos, their orange and white layers glowing in the sunlight. They form silently over millions of years, each one a temporary sculpture that will eventually succumb to weathering. For now, they stand in silent ranks, a stone forest that testifies to the power of water and time. The quiet respiration of soil releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Soil is alive with bacteria, fungi, and countless invertebrates, all breathing as they decompose organic matter. Plant roots also respire, taking in oxygen and releasing CO2. This collective breathing of the soil is a major component of the carbon cycle, returning carbon from dead material back into the atmosphere. On a global scale, soil respiration releases more CO2 than all human fossil fuel burning, but it's part of a natural cycle balanced by photosynthesis. The process is continuous and silent, happening beneath every footstep. Healthy soil teems with life, and that life is constantly exhaling, contributing to the slow circulation of elements that connects all living things. The formation of ice caves within glaciers happens as meltwater carves tunnels through the ice. In summer, water flows on the surface of a glacier, finding cracks and crevasses. It melts its way downward and through the ice, creating passages that can be large enough to walk through. The walls of these caves are smooth and blue, the color resulting from the ice's density and the way it absorbs light. Red and orange wavelengths are absorbed, while blue light is scattered back to our eyes. These caves are temporary, collapsing and reforming as the glacier moves and melts. Visiting one is like stepping into a cathedral of ice, where light glows blue and the silence is profound. The cave forms without sound, water and warmth sculpting the ancient ice into transient beauty. The silent growth of lichen on rocks is a partnership between fungi and algae, or cyanobacteria. The fungus provides structure and protection, while the photosynthetic partner produces food from sunlight. Together, they can survive in places where neither could live alone. Bare rock, Arctic tundra, desert stones. Lichen grows extremely slowly, sometimes only a few millimeters per year, but it can live for centuries. As it grows, it secretes acids that slowly break down the rock surface, beginning the process of soil formation. This quiet work is one of the first steps in transforming barren rock into a landscape that can support other life. Lichen comes in many colors and forms: crusty patches, leafy lobes, branching structures. It asks little from the environment and gives back the foundation for future ecosystems. The formation of natural springs brings groundwater to the surface in silence. Where the water table intersects the land surface, or where impermeable rock forces groundwater upward, a spring emerges. The water may have traveled underground for years or decades, filtered through layers of rock and soil. It emerges clear and cold, often at a constant temperature year-round. Springs have been vital to human settlement throughout history, providing reliable water in places where surface water is scarce. The flow is steady and quiet, a gentle upwelling that seems almost magical. Some springs create entire rivers, born fully formed from the earth. Others are small seeps that keep a patch of ground perpetually wet, creating a microhabitat for specialized plants and animals. The process of evapotranspiration moves water from the land back into the atmosphere without a sound. Plants draw water up from the soil through their roots and release it as vapor through tiny pores in their leaves called stomata. This transpiration, combined with evaporation from soil and water surfaces, returns vast amounts of water to the air. A single large tree can transpire hundreds of liters of water per day. Forests act as green fountains, pumping moisture into the atmosphere and influencing regional climates. The Amazon rainforest generates much of its own rainfall through this process, the trees recycling water in a continuous loop. This silent circulation is essential to the water cycle, connecting soil, plants, and sky in an endless exchange. The formation of natural tar pits occurs where petroleum seeps to the surface. In places like the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, crude oil oozes up through fissures in the ground. The lighter components evaporate, leaving behind thick, sticky asphalt. Over thousands of years, these tar pits have trapped countless animals. Thirsty creatures, mistaking the surface for water, or predators pursuing prey, became mired in the sticky tar. Their bones sank and were preserved in astonishing numbers. The tar pits are windows into the Pleistocene, revealing the mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and dire wolves that once roamed the area. The seepage continues today, silent and slow, the same process that has been happening for tens of thousands of years. The tar preserves bones, but also plant material, pollen, and even insects, creating a detailed record of ancient ecosystems. The silent transformation of graphite into diamond requires immense pressure and heat deep within the earth. Carbon atoms, arranged in flat sheets in graphite, are compressed under the weight of kilometers of rock and heated by the Earth's interior. Under these extreme conditions, the atoms rearrange into the tight, three-dimensional lattice that makes diamond the hardest natural material. This transformation takes place in the mantle, at depths of 150 kilometers or more. Volcanic eruptions then carry these diamonds rapidly to the surface in a type of magma called kimberlite. The journey from deep earth to the surface is violent, but the formation of the diamond itself is a slow, silent process. Carbon transformed by pressure and time into something precious and enduring. The quiet unfurling of a butterfly's wings after emerging from its chrysalis is a moment of transformation. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar's body is broken down almost completely, reorganizing into the adult form. When the butterfly emerges, its wings are crumpled and wet. It pumps fluid from its body into the wing veins, expanding them to their full size. Then it must wait, motionless, for the wings to dry and harden. This process takes hours, and during this time, the butterfly is vulnerable, unable to fly. But it happens in silence, a patient unfolding that reveals colors and patterns that were hidden in the chrysalis. Once the wings are ready, the butterfly will take its first flight, but the preparation for that flight is a quiet, delicate process, a final act of metamorphosis. The formation of natural levees along rivers happens through repeated flooding. When a river overflows its banks, the water slows as it spreads out, and it deposits the sediment it was carrying. The coarsest, heaviest particles settle first, right at the river's edge, building up a ridge over time. These natural levees can grow high enough to contain the river even during moderate floods. The land behind the levees, the floodplain, is lower and may become marshy. This process has shaped river valleys around the world, creating the characteristic cross-section of a river channel flanked by raised banks. The levees form silently, flood by flood, each inundation adding another thin layer. Humans have often built upon these natural levees, seeking high ground near the water, and have also constructed artificial levees to control flooding, though these can have unintended consequences downstream. The silent accumulation of cosmic dust on Earth adds thousands of tons of material to our planet each year. Tiny particles from asteroids, comets, and interplanetary space constantly rain down through the atmosphere. Most are so small that they drift down gently rather than burning up. They settle on rooftops, in oceans, on ice sheets, a slow, steady influx of extraterrestrial matter. This dust is ancient, some of it predating the formation of Earth itself, grains that have traveled through space for billions of years. Collecting and studying this dust gives scientists clues about the composition of the early solar system. It falls silently, invisibly, a connection between Earth and the wider cosmos, a reminder that our planet is not isolated but part of a dynamic, dusty universe. The formation of natural oil seeps on the ocean floor creates unique ecosystems. Where tectonic activity fractures the seafloor, oil and methane can leak out, forming pools and streams of hydrocarbons. Specialized bacteria feed on these chemicals, forming the base of a food web that includes tube worms, clams, and crabs. These cold seep communities thrive in the deep ocean, far from sunlight, deriving their energy from chemistry rather than photosynthesis. The seepage is continuous and silent, a slow release that has been happening for thousands of years. The oil and methane are the remnants of ancient life, organic matter buried and transformed over millions of years, now returning to the surface to support new life. These ecosystems show that life is resourceful, finding energy in the most unlikely places. The process of pedogenesis, or soil formation, transforms rock into the living skin of the Earth. It begins with weathering, as physical and chemical processes break down rock into smaller particles. Lichens and mosses colonize the surface, adding organic matter when they die. Roots probe into cracks, prying them wider. Burrowing animals mix the material. Bacteria and fungi decompose organic matter, releasing nutrients. Over centuries and millennia, distinct soil layers, or horizons, develop. The topsoil becomes rich in organic matter, while lower layers contain weathered rock and minerals. Soil is not just dirt. It's a complex, living system that supports nearly all terrestrial life. Its formation is slow and silent, a transformation that happens beneath our feet, largely unnoticed, yet utterly essential. The silent migration of nutrients in ocean upwelling zones brings life to the surface. In certain areas, winds and ocean currents push surface water away from the coast, and cold, nutrient-rich water from the deep rises to replace it. This upwelling brings nitrogen, phosphorus, and other nutrients that have accumulated in the deep ocean, fueling explosions of phytoplankton growth. These microscopic plants form the base of the food web, supporting fish, seabirds, and marine mammals. Upwelling zones, though they cover only a small fraction of the ocean, are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. The process is driven by wind and the Earth's rotation, a silent circulation that connects the ocean's depths with its sunlit surface, sustaining abundance in places that would otherwise be barren. The silent formation of natural bridges continues across the world, carved not by sudden violence, but by the patient work of water and wind over millennia. A stream finds a weak point in a rock wall and begins to flow through it, grain by grain dissolving the stone or carrying it away in suspension. Over thousands of years, the opening grows wider and taller until an arch remains, spanning space with elegant strength. These bridges stand as monuments to the power of gentle persistence, to forces that work without announcement or fanfare. They remind us that transformation does not require noise, that the most dramatic changes can unfold in perfect silence. Deep beneath the ocean floor, methane hydrates rest in frozen stillness. These strange substances form when methane gas becomes trapped within a lattice of ice crystals under conditions of high pressure and low temperature. They exist in a delicate balance, stable only within a narrow range of conditions found in deep marine sediments and Arctic permafrost. The molecules arrange themselves in a cage-like structures, each cage holding a single methane molecule in crystalline suspension. This process occurs without sound, without movement visible to human eyes. Yet these deposits contain more carbon than all other fossil fuels combined. They rest in cold darkness, silent archives of ancient organic matter, waiting in geological patience. The formation of natural glass occurs in several quiet ways across the Earth. When lightning strikes sand, the intense heat can fuse the grains into hollow tubes called fulgurites, creating glass in an instant that passes too quickly for sound to register in human memory. When volcanic lava cools so rapidly that crystals have no time to form, obsidian emerges, smooth and dark and silent. When meteorites strike the Earth with tremendous force, the heat and pressure can create tektites, small glassy objects that cool as they fly through the air. Each of these processes transforms one substance into another without the sustained sound we might expect, leaving behind only the quiet evidence of transformation. The movement of nutrients through the water column in lakes follows patterns of seasonal silence. In temperate lakes, the water stratifies during summer into distinct layers that do not mix. The warm surface layer, called the epilimnion, floats above the cooler hypolimnion, separated by a transition zone called the thermocline. As autumn arrives and surface waters cool, the temperature difference diminishes until the entire lake reaches a uniform temperature. At this point, wind can mix the entire water column, bringing oxygen-rich surface water to the depths and nutrient-rich deep water to the surface. This turnover happens without drama, without sound, yet it renews the lake and prepares it for the seasons ahead. The formation of natural levees along rivers occurs through the quiet deposition of sediment during floods. When a river overflows its banks, the water slows as it spreads across the floodplain, and the sediment it carries begins to settle. The coarsest, heaviest particles settle first, right at the river's edge, while finer particles are carried farther from the channel. Over many floods across many years, the deposits near the channel build up higher than the surrounding floodplain, creating raised banks that ironically make future floods more likely to be contained. These levees grow incrementally, silently, shaped by the patient mathematics of water flow and sediment transport. The process of nitrogen fixation by bacteria represents one of the most important silent transformations in the living world. Atmospheric nitrogen, though abundant, exists in a form that most organisms cannot use. Certain bacteria possess the remarkable ability to break the strong triple bond between nitrogen atoms and incorporate the nitrogen into compounds that plants can absorb. These bacteria live in soil, in water, and in special nodules on the roots of legumes, working constantly without sound or light or any signal we can perceive. They transform the atmosphere into life, making possible the proteins and nucleic acids that build every living thing. This quiet alchemy sustains the entire biosphere. The formation of natural molds and casts in paleontology preserves the shapes of ancient life in silent detail. When an organism is buried in sediment, its soft tissues typically decay, but its hard parts may remain long enough for the surrounding sediment to harden into rock. If the hard parts then dissolve away, they leave behind a hollow space called a mold, preserving the external shape of the organism. If this mold later fills with minerals, it creates a cast, a three-dimensional replica of the original structure. These processes unfold over immense spans of time, each step occurring in darkness and silence. Yet they allow us to see creatures that lived hundreds of millions of years ago. The silent accumulation of cosmic spherules on Earth's surface adds a constant, gentle rain of extraterrestrial material to our planet. These tiny spheres, typically less than a millimeter in diameter, form when micrometeorites enter the atmosphere and melt, then cool into rounded droplets before landing. Thousands of tons of this material fall to Earth each year, settling onto ice sheets, ocean floors, and rooftops without fanfare. Each spherule is a small messenger from space, a reminder that our planet exists within a larger cosmic environment. They accumulate in silence, patient evidence of the constant exchange between Earth and the solar system that surrounds it. The process of biomineralization allows organisms to create structures of remarkable strength and beauty without sound. Mollusks secrete calcium carbonate to build their shells, layer by microscopic layer, following patterns encoded in their genes. Diatoms, single-celled algae, construct intricate cell walls from silica, creating geometric patterns of extraordinary complexity. Vertebrates build bones and teeth by depositing calcium phosphate in an organic matrix, creating composite materials stronger than either component alone. These processes occur at the molecular level, guided by proteins and cellular machinery, unfolding in aqueous silence. The structures they create, shells, skeletons, tests, persist long after the organisms that made them have returned to the elements. The formation of natural tar seeps brings ancient hydrocarbons to the surface in slow, viscous silence. In places where oil deposits lie close to the surface, the lightest fractions evaporate over time, leaving behind thick, sticky asphalt that oozes upward through cracks and porous rock. These seeps have existed for thousands of years, slowly releasing their contents into the environment. They trap unwary animals, preserving their bones in remarkable detail, creating natural museums of Pleistocene life. The tar moves too slowly to generate sound, flowing like dark honey through geological pathways, patient and inexorable. The process of soil aggregation binds individual particles into larger clusters, creating the structure that allows soil to hold both water and air. Clay particles, organic matter, and various binding agents produced by roots and microorganisms work together to form aggregates of different sizes. These clusters create pore spaces that allow water to infiltrate and drain, roots to penetrate, and air to circulate. The formation of these aggregates happens gradually, through countless small interactions between particles and organisms, building the architecture that makes soil more than just powdered rock. This structuring occurs in darkness and silence, yet it determines whether soil will support life or wash away in the first rain. The silent drift of ocean gyres moves vast quantities of water in circular patterns that span entire ocean basins. These gyres are driven by wind patterns, the Coriolis effect, and differences in water density, creating currents that flow for thousands of miles. The North Atlantic Gyre, the South Pacific Gyre, and their counterparts in other oceans move water at speeds, typically measured in centimeters per second, far too slow to generate audible sound. Yet they transport heat, nutrients, and organisms across vast distances, connecting distant shores and moderating global climate. A single drop of water might circle a gyre for years before escaping, traveling in silence through the deep blue. The formation of natural concrete occurs when certain types of sediment cement themselves together through chemical processes. In some environments, calcium carbonate precipitates from groundwater and binds sand or gravel in a solid rock called calcrete or caliche. In other places, silica acts as a cement, creating silcrete. These materials form slowly as mineral-rich water percolates through sediment and evaporates, leaving behind dissolved minerals that gradually fill the spaces between grains. Over time, loose sediment transforms into hard, durable rock without heat, without pressure, without any dramatic event. The transformation is purely chemical, silent, and patient. The process of photosynthetic oxygen production has transformed Earth's atmosphere over billions of years, working in perfect silence. Cyanobacteria first evolved the ability to split water molecules and release oxygen as a byproduct more than 2 billion years ago. This oxygen initially reacted with dissolved iron in the oceans, creating the banded iron formations we see in ancient rocks. Eventually, oxygen began to accumulate in the atmosphere, fundamentally changing the planet and making possible the evolution of complex life. Today, photosynthetic organisms continue this work, quietly splitting water molecules and releasing oxygen, maintaining the atmosphere that we breathe. Each molecule of oxygen is a gift from green cells working in sunlight, producing life-giving gas without fanfare. The formation of natural fulgurites creates branching tubes of glass beneath the surface of sandy soils. When lightning strikes sand, the electrical current follows a path of least resistance downward, and the temperature along this path can exceed 30,000 degrees Celsius. The sand melts instantly and fuses into glass, preserving the lightning's path in solid form. These structures can extend several meters into the ground, branching like frozen lightning, their interiors often hollow and smooth. The formation happens in a fraction of a second, and while the lightning itself produces thunder, the creation of the glass tube is instantaneous and silent, a transformation too fast for sound to characterize. What remains is a delicate sculpture, easily broken, a record of energy's brief passage through sand. The silent process of mineral replacement and fossilization can preserve biological structures in exquisite detail. As groundwater percolates through buried remains, it can dissolve the original material and simultaneously deposit different minerals in its place. Bone may be replaced by silica, wood by agate, shell by pyrite. The replacement can occur so gradually and precisely that microscopic structures are preserved, allowing scientists to study the cellular anatomy of organisms that lived millions of years ago. This transformation happens molecule by molecule, in darkness and silence, converting life into stone while maintaining its form. The formation of natural bridges in ice occurs when glacial meltwater carves tunnels through ice sheets and glaciers. Water flowing beneath or through ice can melt channels that grow larger over time, eventually creating passages large enough to walk through. These ice bridges are temporary features, lasting only as long as the balance between melting and ice flow allows. They glow with blue light when the sun shines through them, their walls smooth and curved by water's patient work. The formation of these structures is silent, a collaboration between flowing water and yielding ice, creating architecture that exists for a season and then transforms again. The process of mineral precipitation in hot springs creates terraces and mounds of remarkable beauty. Water heated by geothermal energy dissolves minerals from deep rocks, then releases them when it cools at the surface. Calcium carbonate, silica, and other minerals build up layer by layer, creating the travertine terraces of places like Mammoth Hot Springs or the silica mounds of geysers. The deposition occurs continuously but imperceptibly, adding microscopic layers that accumulate into substantial structures over years and decades. The springs may bubble or flow with sound, but the building of stone happens in silence, a chemical process that transforms dissolved minerals into solid architecture. The silent movement of tree sap through xylem vessels brings water and nutrients from roots to leaves. This movement relies primarily on transpiration, the evaporation of water from leaf surfaces, which creates negative pressure that pulls water upward through the plant. Cohesion between water molecules and adhesion between water and vessel walls allow this column of water to be pulled to heights exceeding 100 meters in the tallest trees. The process requires no pump, no moving parts, only the physical properties of water and the gradient created by evaporation. Sap moves upward in silence, defying gravity through elegant physics, sustaining the green canopy far above the forest floor. The formation of natural mercury deposits occurs through volcanic and hydrothermal processes that concentrate this unusual metal. Mercury exists in small quantities throughout Earth's crust, but in certain locations, geological processes bring it together in mineable concentrations. Hydrothermal fluids carry dissolved mercury upward, and when conditions change, the mercury precipitates as cinnabar, a red sulfide mineral. Over time, these deposits can accumulate, creating the sources from which humans have extracted mercury for thousands of years. The concentration process is slow and silent, driven by heat and chemistry, building deposits grain by grain over geological time. The process of seasonal ice formation on lakes demonstrates the unusual properties of water in quiet detail. As autumn cools the surface water, it becomes denser and sinks, but only until it reaches 4 degrees Celsius, the temperature at which water is most dense. Further cooling makes water less dense, so the coldest water remains at the surface, where it eventually freezes. Ice floats because it is less dense than liquid water, creating an insulating layer that protects the water below. This unusual behavior, caused by the molecular structure of water, allows aquatic life to survive winter in the liquid water beneath the ice. The freezing proceeds from the surface downward, silently sealing the lake under a crystalline lid that will remain until spring. The silent accumulation of pollen in lake sediments creates an archive of past vegetation. Each year, plants release pollen into the air, and some of this pollen settles onto lakes, where it sinks and becomes incorporated into the sediment. Pollen grains have tough outer walls that resist decay, and each species has a distinctive shape, allowing scientists to identify which plants were present in the surrounding landscape. By extracting cores from lake bottoms and analyzing the pollen at different depths, researchers can reconstruct how vegetation has changed over thousands of years. This archive accumulates grain by grain, season by season, in silence and darkness, preserving a record of the living world above. The formation of natural asphalt lakes occurs where petroleum seeps to the surface and accumulates in depressions. The lightest components evaporate, leaving behind thick, viscous asphalt that can form pools or lakes. The Pitch Lake in Trinidad and the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles are famous examples, places where asphalt has accumulated for thousands of years. These lakes are not static. They flow very slowly, their surfaces constantly renewed by material rising from below. The movement is imperceptible, silent, measured in millimeters per year. Yet over time, this slow flow has trapped and preserved countless organisms, creating fossil deposits of exceptional richness. The process of chemosynthesis in deep-sea environments allows life to thrive without sunlight. At hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, bacteria harness the chemical energy in compounds like hydrogen sulfide and methane, using it to build organic molecules from carbon dioxide. These bacteria form the base of food webs that include giant tube worms, clams, and other specialized organisms. The process is analogous to photosynthesis, but uses chemical energy instead of light, allowing life to flourish in absolute darkness. This transformation of chemical energy into biological energy occurs without sound, without light, in the cold or hot waters of the deep ocean, demonstrating that life can find a way even in the most unlikely places. The silent formation of natural dams by beavers represents one of the few examples of landscape engineering by non-human animals. Beavers cut trees and branches and arrange them across streams, then seal the gaps with mud and vegetation. The resulting dam creates a pond that provides the beavers with protection and access to food. While the falling of trees and the movement of water make sound, the slow accumulation of the dam structure itself is a quiet process, built stick by stick over weeks and months. These dams can alter entire watersheds, creating wetlands that support diverse communities of plants and animals, demonstrating how the patient work of small engineers could transform landscapes. The process of diagenesis transforms loose sediment into solid sedimentary rock through a series of quiet changes. After sediment is deposited, it undergoes compaction as the weight of overlying material squeezes out water and reduces pore space. Chemical changes occur as minerals dissolve and reprecipitate, cementing grains together. Organic matter may be altered or destroyed. Over time, these processes convert soft mud into shale, loose sand into sandstone, shell fragments into limestone. The transformation occurs over millions of years, in darkness and pressure, without drama or sound, turning the debris of one era into the foundation of the next. The formation of natural platinum deposits demonstrates how dense metals can concentrate through geological processes. Platinum and related metals occur in very low concentrations in most rocks, but certain geological processes can concentrate them. When magma crystallizes, dense platinum group metals can settle to the bottom of the magma chamber, forming layers enriched in these valuable elements. Erosion of these rocks can release the metals, which accumulate in stream sediments as placer deposits. These concentration processes work through gravity and chemistry, silently sorting and gathering rare elements over millions of years. The silent process of cellulose decomposition recycles carbon and nutrients in forests and grasslands. Cellulose, the main structural component of plant cell walls, is difficult to break down, but specialized fungi and bacteria possess the enzymes needed to cleave its molecular bonds. These organisms work slowly, gradually converting tough plant material into simpler compounds that other organisms can use. A fallen log may take decades to fully decompose, its substance gradually returning to the soil. This process occurs in silence, driven by countless microscopic organisms working in darkness and moisture, completing the cycle that allows nutrients to flow from soil to plant and back again. The formation of natural zeolites occurs when volcanic ash reacts with alkaline water over long periods. Zeolites are crystalline minerals with porous structures that can trap and release water and other small molecules. They form slowly in closed basins, in volcanic tuff, and in deep-sea sediments, as volcanic glass gradually transforms into these more stable minerals. The process can take thousands to millions of years, occurring in silence as water and rock interact at the molecular level. The resulting minerals have remarkable properties, including the ability to act as molecular sieves, selectively absorbing certain molecules while allowing others to pass. The silent movement of magma through Earth's crust occurs along pathways of least resistance, following fractures and zones of weakness. Magma is less dense than the surrounding solid rock, so it tends to rise, but its movement is slow, measured typically in meters per year or slower. As it rises, it may stall and collect in magma chambers, where it can reside for thousands of years before erupting or crystallizing in place. This movement shapes the crust from within, creating the plumbing systems that feed volcanoes and the intrusions that will one day be exposed by erosion. The flow is too slow and too deep to generate sound, a silent reshaping of the planet's interior. The process of natural mummification preserves bodies in environments that inhibit decay. In very dry conditions, such as deserts or certain caves, bodies can desiccate before bacteria and fungi can decompose them. In very cold conditions, freezing can halt decay. In peat bogs, acidic water and lack of oxygen create conditions that preserve skin and soft tissues while dissolving bones. These natural mummies form without intention, when circumstances align to prevent the normal processes of decomposition. The preservation occurs silently, as moisture leaves tissues or cold halts bacterial activity, creating time capsules that can last for thousands of years. The formation of natural pigments and minerals creates the colors we see in rocks and soils. Iron oxides produce reds, yellows, and browns. Copper compounds create greens and blues. Manganese oxides contribute blacks and purples. These colors form as minerals weather and oxidize, as metal ions substitute into crystal structures, as microscopic particles scatter light. The colors develop gradually, as chemical reactions proceed at the pace of geological time, transforming gray rock into the vibrant hues of painted deserts and banded cliffs. The transformation is silent, a slow blooming of color driven by chemistry and time. The silent process of groundwater recharge replenishes aquifers with water from the surface. Rain and snowmelt infiltrate the soil, percolating downward through pore spaces and fractures until they reach the saturated zone. This journey can take days in permeable materials or thousands of years in fine-grained sediments. As water moves downward, it is filtered by the soil and rock, often emerging in aquifers cleaner than when it entered. This recharge is essential for maintaining groundwater supplies, yet it occurs invisibly, silently, beneath our feet, a hidden part of the water cycle that sustains wells and springs. The formation of natural hydrogen gas in certain geological settings represents a frontier in our understanding of Earth's chemistry. Hydrogen can be produced when water reacts with iron-rich rocks in a process called serpentinization, or when radiation breaks down water molecules in deep, ancient rocks. This hydrogen can accumulate in underground reservoirs, sometimes in quantities large enough to be potentially useful as an energy source. The production of this gas occurs deep underground, in darkness and silence, a chemical process that has likely continued throughout Earth's history, creating a resource we are only beginning to explore. The process of mineral dissolution in caves creates the voids that allow caves to exist. Water containing dissolved carbon dioxide becomes weakly acidic and can slowly dissolve limestone and other carbonate rocks. Over thousands to millions of years, this dissolution enlarges fractures into passages and rooms. The process continues as long as water flows through the rock, gradually expanding the cave system. This dissolution is silent, a molecular-level interaction between water and stone, yet it creates some of the most dramatic underground landscapes on Earth, spaces of darkness and stillness carved by patient chemistry. The silent accumulation of aeolian sediments builds deposits from wind-transported particles. Dust storms carry fine particles thousands of kilometers from their source, depositing them in layers that can accumulate over time. Lust deposits, composed of wind-blown silt, can reach thicknesses of hundreds of meters in some regions, recording millions of years of dust accumulation. These deposits settle grain by grain, silently building layers that preserve a record of ancient wind patterns and climate conditions. The dust falls without fanfare, each particle finding its resting place, contributing to deposits that will one day tell stories of the past. The formation of natural bridges and arches in rock demonstrates the power of selective erosion. Water, wind, and ice exploit zones of weakness in rock formations, removing material more quickly where the rock is fractured, softer, or more soluble. Over time, this differential erosion can create openings that grow into windows and eventually arches. The process is slow and silent, working grain by grain, year by year, until suddenly a bridge stands free, spanning space with stone. These structures are temporary on geological timescales, destined to eventually collapse, but for now they stand as monuments to the patient work of erosion. The process of natural oil formation transforms ancient organic matter into the petroleum that powers modern civilization. When organisms die and are buried in sediments with low oxygen, their remains may be preserved rather than fully decomposed. Over millions of years, as these sediments are buried deeper, heat and pressure transform the organic matter first into kerogen, then into oil and gas. This transformation occurs slowly, in darkness and silence, deep beneath the surface, converting the substance of ancient life into energy-rich hydrocarbons. The oil that forms may migrate through porous rocks until it is trapped, creating the reservoirs that humans have learned to tap. The silent growth of ice sheets accumulates snow over thousands of years. Each snowfall adds a new layer, and the weight of accumulating snow gradually compresses the lower layers into ice. Air bubbles are trapped in the ice, preserving samples of ancient atmosphere. Dust and volcanic ash create visible layers that mark the passage of time. The ice sheet grows slowly, sometimes advancing, sometimes retreating, responding to changes in snowfall and temperature that play out over millennia. This growth is silent, a patient accumulation that creates ice masses kilometers thick, heavy enough to depress the Earth's crust beneath them. The formation of natural cement by calcite precipitation binds sediments in many environments. In caves, calcite precipitates from dripping water to form stalactites and stalagmites. In soils, it can cement particles together to form caliche. In the ocean, it binds sediments into hard-ground surfaces. This precipitation occurs when carbon dioxide escapes from water, reducing the water's ability to hold dissolved calcium carbonate, which then crystallizes. The process is chemical, silent, and often very slow, building structures molecule by molecule, creating stone from water and dissolved minerals. The process of natural selection operates silently across generations, shaping populations through differential survival and reproduction. Individuals with traits that help them survive and reproduce in their environment pass those traits to more offspring than individuals without those traits. Over many generations, the frequency of beneficial traits increases in the population. This process requires no intention, no foresight, no plan, yet it has produced all the diversity of life on Earth. It works through countless small events, each silent, each inconsequential on its own, but collectively creating the patterns we see in the living world. Adaptation emerges from this process, not through sudden leaps, but through the accumulation of small changes over vast spans of time. The formation of natural levees and river deltas occurs as sediment-laden water slows and drops its load. The coarsest sediment settles first, building up the river's banks, while finer material is carried farther into the delta. Over time, These deposits create a network of raised channels that distribute water and sediment across the delta plain. The levees grow imperceptibly, millimeter by millimeter, flood by flood, shaping the landscape and determining where water will flow. This building process is silent, driven by the physics of flowing water and settling particles, creating landforms that can persist for thousands of years. And now, as we near the end of our journey through these silent wonders, perhaps you can feel how much of Earth's work happens without announcement, without drama, without any need for our attention. The planet breathes and builds and transforms in quietness, following laws that require no proclamation. Mountains rise in silence, crystals form in darkness, life adapts without fanfare. These processes do not need us to witness them, yet they continue, patient and inexorable, shaping the world in which we live. You have traveled with me through snow and stone, through depths of ocean and heights of atmosphere, through processes that span seconds and those that span eons. Each phenomenon we have explored is real, is happening now somewhere on Earth or in the vastness of space, working in silence, transforming matter and energy according to the elegant rules that govern our universe. There is something deeply comforting in this knowledge, in understanding that beneath the noise and rush of daily life, these quiet processes continue, reliable and constant. If you are still awake, know that there are countless more silent wonders to explore, more stories of patient transformation, more examples of nature's quiet genius. The Earth is generous with its mysteries, and science is the gentle practice of learning to see them. But if sleep is finding you now, that is good too. Let these thoughts settle softly in your mind like snow on a quiet field, like sediment drifting to the ocean floor, like dew forming on morning grass. You are safe. The world continues its silent work around you. The atoms in your body were forged in stars, have cycled through countless forms, and will continue their journey long after you rest. You are part of these processes, made of the same substances, following the same laws, connected to everything we have discussed tonight through the simple fact of existence. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, no sound you need to make. Rest is itself a natural process, as necessary and as beautiful as any we have explored. The snow falls silently outside someone's window. The glaciers move without sound. The crystals grow in darkness. The tides rise and fall. The continents drift. The stars shine their ancient light across the void. And you can simply rest, held by the same forces that hold everything, breathing the air that plants have made, warmed by the energy that came from the sun, lying on a planet that spins and orbits in the silence of space. Thank you for traveling with me through these quiet wonders. May your rest be as peaceful as snow settling on a winter forest, as deep as the ocean plains, as gentle as dew forming in the first light of dawn. The world will continue its patient work while you sleep, and these silent processes will still be unfolding when you wake, constant and calm and endlessly fascinating. Good night.